Stop the cap.
The black average IQ is 85, which is only 7 points higher than the Army will even allow because there's no job for them in the Army. 85. Do I like that? No. That sucks. That's horrifying. That's true. So, okay, so now we've been given this world where everybody's the same. And oh my God, race doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. Everyone's equal. Everyone's equal. Yeah, everyone's equal in the eyes of a farmer who wants a herd to slaughter. It's like, we're not equal. There's no equal. No one is equal. And so I say this shit and people go, oh my God, racist, bigot, homophobe, Nazi, homophobe, racist, bigot. No. I'm having to fucking shoulder the burden because the fucking generation before me were a bunch of sloth, envious, just lustful, fucking pathetic man children. And then who do they blame? The millennials, right? The victims. I used to blame the millennials. The millennials are a bunch of fucking pussies. Why are they such pussies? They can't make eye contact. Everyone's crying. Why are the boys always crying? Because no one fucking taught them anything. God was taken away. Nation was taken away. Family was taken away. And it was replaced with materialism, nihilism. You know, just like Forrest Gump. You're just a feather floating in the wind. Everything's chance. Even this fucking retard with broken legs can run faster than everybody. It's just luck. No, the fuck it isn't.
I'm going to do this video over because I felt I was driving and I was trying to make the video at the same time. And a lot of times I'm not paying attention. So my thoughts are all over the place. I'm going to combine two separate situations into one video because they're both related and they kind of open my eyes to a couple of things. So anyway, the other day I asked a question, like, but I had what type of pie was that? I think it was like pumpkin pie or something like that, or sweet potato pie. I think it was a sweet potato pie that I had as a thumbnail. And, you know, it came out of the, Shay Sharday is going back and forth with Chrissy. I haven't even watched all those videos, but, it was the somewhere in there, the other black woman that focuses on colorism talked about black women getting a bigger piece of the pie. And that kind of goes to, or at least I think it goes to, the whole notion of black women wanting global validation and not just individual validation coming from black men. The thing is global validation, the way that black women think that global validation is like white men because they control the media, that they go around actively promoting white women to non-black men. That's not what happens. White women's promotion is a byproduct of white men's global position or position in America, right? After they went and raped and pillaged the global South and vacuumed resources all the way back to Europe. And so the funny thing is like when you get into the white nationalist, right? In particularly when it comes to black men, they feel very threatened, sexually threatened by black men. And some people argue black men are more masculine, more testosterone, more athleticism, whatever it is. There is a sexual fear that revolves around black men. Now, in the past, white men used to just run around and say there's no way possible for a white woman to be attracted to a black man, and that black men were just running around and they're all rapey and they want to rape white women and we have to protect white women's, chastity. But, just so that everybody's clear, white men are not actively promoting white women, to black men. As a rule, most of their promotion or white women's promotion is just a byproduct of white men's position and the fact that they control the media, and most of the women that you're going to see are all going to be white. Most of the men that you're going to see are going to be white. This is something that I believe it was Captain Solo's mother, confirmed. She was like, yeah, all our crushes were, the white men that you saw in movies, and, the Dick Van Dyke types and stuff like that, and Howard Dean. The black women fantasized about those white men because that's who they saw on screen. It wasn't until you had, people like, Harry Belafonte or Sidney Poitier, that came later. Or you only had like maybe one or two people. You didn't have a whole bunch of people. And people tend to, be attracted to people that they're exposed to, which, I would argue that even when it comes to the idea of black men being the sexual threat, a lot of it has to do with the whatever behind closed doors white women are saying about black men. I remember when I was in high school, there was a white woman whose mother didn't want her daughter being attracted to black men, and she barred her from watching MTV. MTV, they wouldn't even allow, Michael Jackson up there until David Bowie, who was married to Imam Bowie, a Somali woman, until he said, if you don't let Michael Jackson up there, don't play my music on MTV. Like I'm gonna pull my music. And so, that was one of the reasons that they allowed Michael Jackson on, MTV. A lot of people don't know that. I don't know all the details of what is going on between white men and white women and some of the things that white women say. We've all seen, some of the ways in which, white women are very open about their attraction to black men. And you'll see it on, social media, the one where they're like black guys, dreads, light skins, and the women like run, away at different speeds and stuff like that. So, there's, they got their own, thing going on. The other day I posted on the community tab the brother from the UK that's making the videos about black men being a sexual threat and hypermasculinity, and how because of black men's outward appearance, physique, body type, skin color, all that stuff, right? We're recognized as the out group, and seen as a sexual threat. And this sexual threat concept has been pushed in white society, from everything from the Moors, to because it's always funny, people talk about, the Moors, they were Arab, but then all the depictions of the Moors are black, and I guess if you're trying to make a distinction between yourself and the other, the black Moor is more, it evokes a visual, outsider, just, predicated off of the black man's black skin, on top of the fact that the black Moors tended to be more of the military arm of, the Moorish, power structure and whatnot. So there is this focus on, black men, as a sexual threat, compounded by, in modern times, things like blacked.com, and, you can't even go on Pornhub without seeing interracial porn. The idea of, the black men, just having a more robust physique, having a bigger dick, I remember when, who was it? Was it Jimmy Kimmel? Who was the one that did puppet sex? Where they did an episode of puppet sex, and then it had like the black guy was like the mailman, it was like a sock puppet episode. It used to be on YouTube, but they took it down. But they did a whole episode, the whole idea of the black delivery guy or the black milkman, you know what I mean? And then the white guy's like, okay, honey, I'm leaving. They did a skit. There was a parody of this with Michael B. Jordan and the State Farm guy. They did that, so there's a lot of the black man being a sexual threat, disrupting the stability of the white man's household that plays out in media. The only movie where it was essentially reversed, actually, no, technically it wasn't reversed. I was going to say Lakeside View with Samuel L. Jackson, where the white guy was married to the black woman. And then Samuel L. Jackson, because he was upset that he found out that his wife possibly could have been cheating with her boss because they were supposed to be at work, but like in the middle of the day, they were, somewhere in traffic. The idea that she was having an affair with her white boss, and then they got into a car accident. And then so Samuel Jackson, who is a cop in the movie, he doesn't get any answers, and so he's just fucks his head up. And then in the movie, a interracial couple of a white man with a black woman moves in next door, which only, reactivates, the issues that he has with the potential reality that his wife was having an affair, with him on, or affair with him. No, I'm sorry, an affair with his wife's boss. That his wife was having an affair with his wife's boss. And in the movie, like, he mentions like certain things, like how white men basically have everything, and to come in and take the black man's woman, like all that stuff is like mentioned in the movie. They did a really good job of like executing the movie and addressing some of like the underlying issues and stuff like that, like the underlying historical, economic disparities in the movie and why he took issue. But the fact that he was a cop, gave him some level of power in the movie that as a black man, he wouldn't otherwise have. If he was just a regular black man, he wouldn't have any power in the movie. But because he was a cop in the movie, he could leverage, being a cop, which is, being basically the enforcement arm of the system of white supremacy, which, he knew people and this, that, and the third. And so, he was able to pull some strings just because of his, tenure as a cop. Right. So, I haven't even gotten into the points I want to make yet, like the real main points. I'm trying to, lay all this out. So, there's been a trend going around on social media. It's this whole like, right? Which basically comes from the Family Guy, and it's got the dog and the kid and the, I think it's like Stewie or whatever, and the whole well thing. Anyway, what is being done is these white men that obviously have it pulls all the racists. It pulls all the racists, the white supremacists, the white nationalists. They all just get off, on the idea of that pretty much all white women who get with black men end up being single moms, right? They're trying to ride, that trope. Now, I'm not here to jump up and deny and say that when black men get with any woman, not just a white woman, that those relationships may be volatile, or more volatile than when white men are in relationships, because white men, they're the dominant members of society. They have the complexion for the connection. They have nepotism. They have generational wealth. There's a lot of things that white men have that facilitate stability in white men's relationships. Now, what the white supremacists are doing, or, basically, on these type of videos and whatnot. So they'll take a white woman's Instagram, and it shows, like, they'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it'll show, her all happy, and then she's with a black guy, and then she's, pregnant, has the babies, and then, there'll be some other post that'll be like, it's so hard being a single mother. And then they basically go, well. Or what's the other one that they'll use? There's another one that they'll use, like Usual Suspects, or something else. So that's like, they're killing multiple birds with one stone with this. But by what they're trying to do is they're trying to, signal to white women, like, if you get with a black guy, you're going to be left a single mom, completely ignoring that 38% of firstborn white children are born out of wedlock. They it's like they try to act like, or pretend like there's no, it's like all or none. All black men who are in interracial relationships or any relationship, all their children or all the women that they're with end up being single moms. And that when it comes to white men are perfect, and white men produce no single moms, at all. I remind you that a lot of MGTOW and a lot of men's right activism, was the result of white men who were divorced, right? And um, whether a white woman is a single mom or whether she's a baby mom, even though all of us would prefer, the whole, there's more respect that's given to somebody who at least tried to start off, on the right foot. At the end of the day, that still equates to a single mom. A divorced woman is a single mom, just the same as a baby mama is a single mom. And whether the man is giving them access to resources or not, I'd argue that the divorced woman is a little bit better because she has the legal system, that's behind her. But if the man is an absentee, because I know some divorced white women that don't get a whole bunch of spousal support, but there's this all or none attitude. And the sad part is black women, they do the same thing, despite the fact that we have a matriarchy in the black community where, marriage is just completely devalued. And you see this with women like Ebony K. Williams and like what she said recently in an interview where she was talking about, sole proprietorship versus, going into business with a partner, and she's trying to justify, her situation and say that she chose sole proprietorship, right? A single mother by choice type of situation. I don't care what anybody says. Being a parent was never meant to be a one-person job. It totally ignores the needs of the child. Even how the child feels in terms of comparing themselves to other children who come from intact homes. You're never going to be able to make up for that. And I don't know why people think that they can make up for that, but they think that. So in any event, the white guys are putting out these videos. Mind you, like let's acknowledge something. People may have different rates of where they start in terms of them getting married or not, but and the percentage of people, like, depending on how much they get married, depends on to the degree in which you're going to have split households. Like, even if a man divorces a woman or a woman divorces a man and then they go off and then they meet other people and then form new relationships and produce new children, those are split households. I don't care what anybody says. Those are split households. Those are house A, house B, type of situations. And what typically ends up happening is that the woman gets custody of the child that obviously came out of her womb. The man goes on and then, goes to a house B situation. And a woman that he gets with can either be childless or she can have a kid. And, what ends up happening is that the man ends up taking more care of the children that live underneath his roof than even his own biological child. Now, it may not be an issue if the woman goes off and she gets with another man and then that man plays a stepfather role. So the child does have a male figure. But if not, she's going to end up being a single mom. And then you're going to have the biological father is basically going to have a estranged relationship with their child, most likely because he's not there all the time. He's more present for his stepchildren or his first biological child's half siblings than he is for his actual biological child. You cannot be in more than one place. This is why when women go off and they think that they're somehow securing something by having a baby with a man that already has children, especially multiple children with multiple women, all you're doing is starving your child of a present father because he can only be in one place at one time. Like, even like when people say, "Oh, we need more fathers in the home," put fathers in the home. If a man has more than one, mother of his children, somebody like Future. What is Future going to do? What, he's got 8 children, 9 children. Was he going to spend, a time with each child gets 1/9 of the time to spend with him? You see how unrealistic that is? This is why, like, in situations like, Islam, you could get away with that, where a man takes on multiple wives and then all of those wives are underneath one roof. I think that's a better scenario than the house A, house B, house C, house D, house E, house G. Like, I think that's where, things begin to fall apart. But anyway, now that I've like prefaced all that, I'm saying, um, the white guys are, one, they're ignoring the fact of how many single mothers they actually create, which, yes, it's less than what black men create. But again, black men are the marginalized group and white men are the dominant group. Pretty much every statistic that you can think of, as I said previously, is going to be a negative statistic as it pertains to, um, as it pertains to, uh, uh, you know, uh, black men relative to white men. Because white men, they got the complexion for their connection, they got nepotism, they got generational wealth, they're the dominant members of society, they get, all different type of treatment, access to capital that black men don't get. Right? Now here's the so like anyway, them making the point like, oh, your relationships are going to fail and you're going to end up being these you're creating single moms. You create single moms in the black community, you create single moms in the white community. I'm like, I don't know why that's surprise. Why is that a surprise when you have a marginalized group of men, when black men specifically are the marginalized group? Like, why is that a surprise? And I say that, people will say, you know, um, why are you acknowledging that? And I say, because um, anytime you don't have gainfully employed men, their relationships are going to be more volatile. And it seems that what white men are trying to do is they're trying to make a character argument. Like, if I go into the white community and I want to see broken households, where am I going to go? Am I going to go to downtown Manhattan, where the income is, $300,000 a year or something like that? Or am I going to go to Appalachia or in West Virginia, in McDowell County, West Virginia? Like, where am I going to go? I'm going to go where white people are poor, where white men they have a lack of gainful employment, right? That's why all these white men are frustrated right now. That's why the white nationalism is on the rise. I mean, most certainly, if they're doing bad, they don't want to see black men doing better. They definitely don't. But what they're trying to do is make a character argument. And the funny thing is this is the exact same thing that the boomers do to them. And I've talked about this before. You guys need to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. Oh, you guys need to, why can't you afford a house? If you weren't buying avocado toast, Chipotle and Starbucks, then maybe you'd be able to afford a house. Right. And we know that that's not true. I mean, freaking Donald Trump and his announcement on 100% tariffs literally, ripped $6.6 trillion out of the economy. Like, people, I mean, I can get into how bad the job market is and whatnot, but I'm saying boomers financialized the system and they made it extremely difficult for young white men, to establish themselves. And so they're going through it right now. There's plenty of videos of white women screaming about ain't nobody on my level, screaming about how come men are not approaching anymore, how come men are not going out, not going in clubs, because they're broke, because they don't have any money. White men are going through what black men have always historically went through. But what white men do is they try to make it a character flaw. Oh, black men, they abandon their kids. That's what they do. No, that's what happens when they're not in the financial position. And a lot of people, young people, love to go into relationships thinking like the future is just going to be brighter and that they're just going to be better off. And the reality is that's not the case. That's not the case. Depending on what the economy is doing, this is just how capitalism is. There's booms and busts. And, if you were a white man, like, in other words, white men, there were plenty of white men after 1929. There were white men who threw themselves out of windows. There were white men who abandoned their families because they couldn't stand to watch their kids, go without or starve, or what happened to black men in the 60s and 70s with the welfare state, where, they could, the whole, the father doesn't need to be there, and how, that split up households, because if he can't get gainful employment and the state's willing to provide resources, well, then maybe it's better for the him to not be there so that his kids can get, resources, right? The black feminist misandrist will make it like, it was just black men abandoning them, as opposed to both of them trying to finesse the system. And this kind of leads into another conversation I'm going to get into, in a second. But I got to make the point about, white men trying to make it like it's some sort of character flaw. But when you see white men without resources, you start seeing the same volatility in their relationships. Only with them, they can't tolerate failure so much. Like, again, they'll kill the wife, they'll kill the children and burn the house down, right? They'll smoke the whole family when they can't make it, when they can't maintain, that positive, white male identity. So that's like the first part. The second part is a conversation that answers the question about why black women will go off and have kids despite the fact that, they'll say, well, black men, y'all can't do X, Y, and Z. And black men, y'all are failures. And black men, you ain't got this, that, and the third going on. Right. And that's meant to, be a jab at black men and a sting and, saying, oh, you can't. And, whether it's meant to coax black men into, getting mad enough to do something, or whether it's just to shut black men up. Either way, I'm saying this is what, some of the women are saying. And so, I posed the question. I said, OK, so why? So if that's how you feel, why the hell are you black women bringing kids into the world? Now, this is the response that was given. The response that was given is that, going back to the whole, white men set up a system that economically disenfranchises black men. And so there's some black people who take the position, in particularly black women. And I say black women uniquely because of we have a growing number of black men who are exiting the community, right? Dating out, all that stuff. And I'm going to get into some of the details of that a little bit later. But it's like, what is it? Just over 1 in 10 black women are marrying outside the race. But there's 1 in 4 black men that are marrying outside of race, when we're specifically talking about newlyweds. I'm done with the talking about the overall numbers, because the older people who are already, like, the older black people had, like, if you just looked at their age group, like, boomers are going to have the lowest percentage of interracial relationships in their population than if I was just looking at Gen Z. Gen Z is going to have a much higher percentage. Gen Z tells you where things are going, right? Or the youngest generations that are getting married is telling you where the trends are. So the trend is just over 1 in 10 black women are marrying outside the race, where 1/4 of black men are marrying outside, the race. Now, here's where the women having the whole baby situation, and it's kind of like the Second Amendment people, and I'll explain why. Right. So some people will take the positions, the black men that are having babies with these women, the 46% that are having babies with the 61% of black women. They take the position that, you're not going to stop me, and they're going to double down on a situation where you deny them, the ability to, procreate and thrive. Right. This is where white people will never beat black people at procreation, because black people take that type of position. And it's the same thing as, if you think, like, in other words, if you think you're going to starve us out, you're not. If you think that you're going to deny black men access to resources to provide for their family, you're not. We're still going to have babies. Now, personally, I don't agree with that. because I don't agree with a person having to grow up and struggle and be in poverty all because you have, a black parents that are like, well, you're not going to stop us from having children and raising a family because, again, you know, when it comes to poor people, a lot of times having children is that's like the main thing that they're ever going to accomplish in life or how they see it because the opportunities aren't there. This kind of reminds me of Catherine Eden, when she wrote the book and had questions as to why poor people were having kids, like why they were putting kids before marriage. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, but the main reason is because the resources aren't there. That's the main reason. The resources aren't there. And, since you can't get married, in the traditional sense, since the resources aren't there, the structure, and then you end up with, well, if men don't have resources, then why am I going to get married and then have to submit, to a man? Why not just have the baby, right? That consummates the relationship. That's what really matters. And black people in poverty take this sort of position. You'll see white people in poverty who take this sort of position. They're never going to have that extravagant wedding because they both come from poor backgrounds, right? So, what ends up happening is, let's say you have a guy, he comes from multi-generational single moms, and then the woman, she comes from multi-generous single moms. So you got matriarchies on both sides. And so one of the things that like Catherine Eden has a bunch of like quotes from young men that, they felt really bad because they couldn't provide and they were angry because nobody like schooled them. Nobody told them, they thought it was all about love. This is kind of the whole thing with the, women and a young man being with a woman and not getting proper male guidance. He'll sleep with a woman thinking everything's cool or they love each other. And as she said, working part-time at McDonald's, you can be a great boyfriend, right? You got no other responsibilities. You got the money that you do make. You can spend, go to the movies, date, all that other stuff. But working part-time at McDonald's makes you a horrible father, makes you a terrible father because you can't provide in the traditional sense. And that affects the men once they wake up to the reality of that type of situation. And sometimes they'll go out there and they'll, their baby mama will be pregnant or even just had the baby, and they'll go out there and they'll start a whole new relationship and be with somebody else because they want to feel that love that they felt before she got pregnant, because now the whole family focuses on, the baby and the fact that the woman, she's the mom and basically she has no control. She has all the control. They weren't married, so he's got like half-ass parental rights, and this is one of the things that thinking men who plan, this is one of the things that they're concerned about because, while there's this matriarchy within the black community and black women think that black men are supposed to just be down with everything that they want to do and, operate in service to the matriarchy, a lot of black men are saying, they're saying no to that. A growing number of black men are saying no to that. Hence a quarter of black men going over the fence. And, let's face the fact that, despite that when black men have more resources, they're more likely to stay in the community. Like if you just look at the trend of the athletes and the entertainers, most of them have black wives, but the white media doesn't want to show you that, right? And there's a reason why white media doesn't want to show you that. They're fucking things up on both ends, which ironically creates the situation that they most fear, right? Because a lot of the black men that go over the fence, they go over the fence because the community is fucked up. One of the things that was pointed out is like, if let's say there's a unionized job and there's 100 spots, like 500 people will show up in line to try to get that job, right? And one of the points that was made was that they were like, nah, it's bullshit. What white men, all the bullshit white men are talking about. The issue's about money. He was like, nah, a lot of guys would be, right there for their family and providing and everything else, if they were gainfully employed. And then a lot of the stuff that goes on in the community with the YNs and everything, that wouldn't be going down. Not if you had men who could actually provide and they were gainfully employed. They try to act like, oh, well, you're on bullshit right now. And if you had money, you'd be on bullshit. This goes back to the Steven Crowder, like, if we keep throwing money at it, which I don't even know where the money is going that he claimed that shit was being thrown at, black students, because the white students are going to, he says, have less money thrown at them. Again, first off, I don't know what money he's talking about, but property taxes are what pay for schools. And so, I don't know if you've seen this video on YouTube. It was like a brand new high school in the suburbs. I forget what it was called, but that whole school was like state of the art. With black schools, that's not the case. Black people are getting hand-me-downs and don't even have whiteboards, and have like an old cathode ray TV, with the VHS, in the corner of the room. They may not even have that. They might still have the TV with the VHS on the cart that they're pushing around from classroom to classroom type of shit. White schools have way more than that. So his whole notion that somehow black schools are being more funded than the white school is bullshit. If that is the case, that money is not going to the black students. The idea that somehow black students are getting a better education is bullshit. Even when it comes to the teachers, white schools definitely get better quality teachers than black schools. So his point was, that it's bullshit. It's bullshit what's being said about black men, and they have this character flaw or this morality flaw. No, it's a lack of fucking money. That's what it is. The other thing that was pointed out was that a lot of the gender war stuff that goes on, or the conversation that goes, is directly tied to black men demanding submission, which came out of the why are you over the fence and dealing with other races of women? Because other races of women are more cooperative and they're in that feminine realm, that men are attracted to and black women are not. And, it's like, well, why aren't black women in that feminine realm? Now, one argument is because black women are in survival mode. It's the black community is a matriarchy and black women were put into that situation. That's one argument. And there's truth to that. Then there's the other argument, which is that because black men were marginalized, black women got a taste of power, whether it's resources from the state, whether it's housing from the state. And so they were able to get extra tribal resources and didn't have to answer to a man. And they took that path and they took that route because it's like there's just certain women, there's a certain population of black women that if they had to choose between dealing with the authority of a man and being independent based on extra tribal resources, they're going to take the extra tribal resources, every time because they just don't want to deal with the authority of black men. On top of the fact that it's like, well, why am I submitting to you? Oh, you want submission? Well, then you're going to have to be the top dog. You're going to have to win a race war, or you're going to have to, have substantially more, than what you have. And then this is the problem with the black men who do have, and why a lot of them end up going over the fence, because any black man who plans is not, number one, he's not just going to have a baby with you just because you want to have a baby. The baby's going to be predicated off of his resources. And again, two people, one person is a planner, the other person is not a long-term planner. That's going to be a problem. And then the second thing is any black man with resources is not going to tolerate, a black woman or any woman for that matter who does not cooperate with what he's trying to do. He's just not going to tolerate that. And because the other races of women, their communities are more intact, they're more, acclimated to the patriarchy or used to the concept of patriarchy, you're going to find way more cooperative non-black women than black women in America, given the culture, that has flourished due to, white supremacy and prolonged exposure to poverty. And so that's why you get the men who leave. This is the funny part about the white supremacist bullshit, right? Because again, and this is like, just look at it for what it is. You got the white nationalists, white supremacists, they're foaming at the mouth because of the propaganda. I looked at the numbers. I've shown the numbers. Like white people who identify as white, it's 235 million white people. White people who we would say literally have like 100% white European blood and nothing else, even though they may present as white. Like Ricky Martin presents as white, but if you probably went into his DNA, there's probably some other stuff there. But he identifies as a white Puerto Rican, but white people in America really wouldn't accept him, as such, right? Or you could have somebody who's white and let's say they're Italian and Syrian. What are they going to look like? They're going to look like a white person, right? So that's the 235 million white people. There's about 204 million white people that we could clearly just say that they are white and have nothing else in their background other than European heritage, right? So if we just go with the lower number, we're going to get like, there's like 100 million white men and 100 million white women, and there's only 20 million black men and 22 million black women, right? And 85% of, is that the newlyweds? I think that's the newlyweds. Or is that the overall? I think it's the overall. Like 85% of black men marry black women, right? Like overall, like the whole, like, I mean, 85%, right? So what percentage of black men are marrying white women? Now I went online and I tried to pull up, oh, my power's about to go. I went online and I tried to pull up some numbers and then like plugged it in chat GPT and tried to get some percentages. So here's the breakdown for the opposite sex newlyweds, where the wife is white and the husband is non-white. Shares of interracial, intermarried, newlywed couples. So when it comes to Hispanic husbands with a white wife, it's about 20%. So again, like I think it's like overall, I think it's like 10% of white women of the white population that are marrying outside the race. So the 10% of those that are getting married, because only about 2 million people are getting married a year. So this is why you have to understand, like, when anytime somebody throws a percentage at you, I'm telling you, you have to ask the question, 20% of what? 50% of what? 5% of what? Of what? Because the way that people get really fucked up on these percentages is they don't ask what the whole numbers are. Get the whole numbers and then figure out what's going on and what the picture actually looks like. So when it comes to the percentage of white women that are getting married, 20% of them are marrying Hispanic men, 7% of them are marrying black men, 4% are marrying Asian men, and 5% are marrying multiracial men. Those are what the numbers are. So Hispanic men are first, black men are second, Asian men are third, and multiracial men are 5. Probably because that's a small demographic, right? But in terms of, for raw numbers, and this is from this is related to the Pew Research. So it says out of 670,000 intermarried newlyweds in 2015, multiplying gives rough counts, that year. So it says about 134,000 married Hispanic, 47,000 married black, 27,000 married Asian, 34,000 married multiracial, and then was it seven? I don't know why this is specific to 8 Indians, but it says 7,000 married Indians. So What is this? 34,000 interracial. Wait, what is this? Hold on. 34,000 multiracial. So why is Indian? Anyway, they separated out the Asians. I don't know why they did that. Because technically speaking, they should do. Oh no, that last category was 1%. Amerindian, an Indian husband, and a white wife is 1%. Oh, so there is a. Okay, I missed that. My eyes were skipping all over the place, right? And so, anyway, all of this is in the 10% of white women who are marrying outside the race. And what was I going to say? There was something I was going to say about this, about the numbers. And so, like, based on the propaganda, freaking give me propaganda. Propaganda would be, what's that movie called? Birth of a Nation, where you had the white woman running away from the white guy in blackface and running over the cliff. Like right now, like aside from the fact that white men are profoundly insecure about black men when it comes to black men being more masculine than them, they don't bitch about any other group. They're not bitching about any other group. They're not bitching about Hispanic men, even though a higher percentage of Hispanic men marry white women. Arguably, you could say some of those Hispanic men present as white, like Nick Fuentes, for example, right? Like he's what, part Mexican and white, right? Presents as a white guy, right? Things like that. So there's a lot of them that are going underneath the radar, and they don't know that this person has, this guy has some other, has a Hispanic background or something like that. But the focus is again on black men. It's not on Asian men. It's not on Indian men. It's not even on multiracial men. It's specifically on black men. So there's a profound, classic, historic, insecurity about black men, or obsession with black men. First it started with we got to protect white women's chastity because the black men, they raping the white women, right? Which is bullshit. They'll now it's, then you go to Hustler magazine and blacked.com. Gail Dines wrote an article about this, and I talked about it before, King Kong and the White Woman. And because that's what they called King Kong in Germany. When King Kong was released in Germany, they changed the title from King Kong to King Kong and the White Woman. And there's a whole bunch of symbology in King Kong where King Kong represents the black beast, basically a black man. And you know how they love to compare black men to apes. And that at the end of the movie, the white woman is his downfall because he's obsessed with the white woman. And then he climbs the Empire State Building, which also represents his downfall, which is apparently in the shape of a phallus, right? This is all this sort of, the ideas that people, scholars and shit have talked about the movie. And then, he gets taken down and, and then they make some statement about how beauty killed the beast, right? Which only further reinforces that white women are, in essence, beauty, right? And they've done this in every King Kong movie. The King Kong is always obsessed with the blonde white woman, which is to white men the ultimate prize is the blonde white woman. She is the ultimate. Okay, so in any event, hold on a second. So Gail Dines basically said that, like in Hustler magazine, they used to have these little cartoons, and the cartoons were very specific, where the cartoons were of basically marginalized or white men that didn't have the greatest upward economic mobility, and they would take those white men and they would make buffoons of them. They would make them, where there was the threat of a black man that was, taking their woman, right? Or it was just, basically, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, taking their woman, which creates like racial anxiety, just because of the white man's socioeconomic standing himself, working class white men. Now, here's what's funny is like when it comes to, so there's this like fear of black men taking white women. And like I said, I don't know what's going on today. I don't know what conversations white men are having with white women. I don't know whether white women are watching a movie and seeing Idris Elba and going, "Oh my God, he's so attractive," and then the white men feel some type of way. I don't know. I don't know. I have no clue what's going on behind closed doors. But white men literally have an obsession with black men and black peen. I don't know whether there's some homoeroticism going on. I don't know whether it's like the movie Get Out where they want black men's bodies, but it's 100% going on because they don't talk about anybody else like this. They literally don't talk about anybody else like this. And so here's where like the fear comes in, right? Because like if you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, if you look at Rosewood, right? Those communities were not burnt down because of fear that black men were attracting white women, right? Those communities were burnt down because of white men just don't want an economically viable black community. Here's the funny part, right? Because white men think, in my opinion, they're already insecure about black male masculinity. They already think, even if the white woman doesn't think, and that black men are more masculine and that white women are attracted to black men, they fear that. That's why they have all these insults. You're a mud shark. Burn the coal, pay the toll. Right? They have all these insults, these insecure incel, type of insults that they hurl at white women for stepping outside, even though we can point to where white men step outside of their race and there's like twice as many white men married to Asian women as there are black men married to white women. But the thing is they don't want black men to be economically viable, even within their own community. And they don't want black men to be economically viable because of the fear that they're going to take white women. The stupid thing is going back to what, was being broken down to me. If there were more black men who were economically viable, then they would focus more on their community. And this goes back to the brother that, has the mindset where he's like, every chance he gets, he'll fuck the shit out of a white woman. He prefers black women, but he'll fuck the shit out of a white woman. Fuck her in her ear, fuck her in her nose, skeet in her eye, have her blowing cum bubbles with her teeth. Okay, he'll do all type of shit. Cause some white women, you cheat, let Brad cheat on a white woman. Oh, she'll go right to black men to go be defiled just because she knows just how much that burns up white guys. And I know because I had that happen to me in college. I didn't know that that's what was going on, but that's what was going on. I didn't know that her boyfriend was racist. And all she wanted, I didn't even get to smash, but she wanted to leave with me, have all her group see that she left with me. That way a rumor would float around so that it got back to her boyfriend because he cheated on her. Either he cheated on her or he broke up with her. One of the two things. And she knew how much that would burn him up. And I literally got used so that she could get back at him. Literally. So they got some shit going on, like between white men and white women. And what's so crazy is, like, come to think about it, he wasn't even like the whitest of white looking dudes. He looked kind of like white and Asian, but I don't know what he was. He could have been like one of them white people from like Kazakhstan or some shit like that. Anyway, the dude was racist because I got the whole breakdown later on. But the thing is like this. It's like going back to what the guy, that loves to run through white women just to fuck and send them back to the white community just to fuck up white men's day. His whole position is white men, they basically cripple black men economically with their system. And so if that's how it's going to be, well, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck as many white women as I can. And because the way that you don't even have to get a white woman pregnant, you can just fuck them, and white men will run around. Oh, she's a mud shark. Oh, she's dirty. She's this. She's that. So he's like, all I got to do is run through white bitches. I don't even have to marry them. I don't even have to have a baby with them. All I got to do is just have it be known. Yeah, I smashed her. You see, and so his position is that because white men economically disenfranchise black men, and that makes it virtually impossible to deal with black women because when men are economically not there, right, the women are insufferable to deal with. And that's how he feels. He feels black women are insufferable to deal with, the attitudes, the matriarchy, the belief systems, all that stuff. And so, he's just on a mission to fuck up white men's day. That's his whole thing. And so, you know, taking the two conversations, or the two situations and putting them together, I'm like, okay, so white men, they want to have it on both ends. They want to have it to where black men, you don't want intact, thriving black communities because that's too much of a threat. Elaine, Ocoee, Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, Slocum, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, all these communities were burnt down because they didn't want black men to be economically viable. And these were towns where black men were with black women and had strong black families, right? This is the bullshit of the conservatives, where they talk out of both sides of their face, acting like they want to see, like they'll mock black men and talk, oh, your families are broken up and oh, you need Jesus and, conservatism and raising families and all the black conservatives, they fall for it. But they really don't want strong black families, right? They don't want a strong black community, right? So the economically disenfranchised black men, right, they end up creating a subculture, street culture, hip hop culture, all this other stuff, right? Which, white women, they'll go frolic over there and think it's entertaining or whatever, right? But it creates an environment where black women become insufferable to deal with because they're looking at black men like, well, you all are weak. You don't have anything. You have no power. You're the white man's bitch, yada, 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 right? And so then the black men do what? They start dating out. They start dating other races of women, right? Because, they essentially can't overthrow the system of white supremacy unless you're going to have what? Black men are going to have open war, with the white people in America, right? So if there's no reparations, if there's no correction, it's just going to lead to the fear that white men have, which is that black men are going to go out here and snatch up all the white women, which again, the numbers don't even support, but they feed into the propaganda. They don't want strong black families where black men are getting with black women and basically staying in their own corner and having safe environments. They want black men to continue to be the boogeyman, which only opens up the door for the interracial relationships that they fear so much. I mean, seriously, if you just look at, okay, what do black men do when they get wealthy? Do they all go out there and get with white women? No. The majority of them in the NBA and in the NFL, they get with black women. But what does the media want to show you? Right? They kill two birds with one stone, right? Because you create racial animosity for black men interacting with black women so they don't develop relationships with black women. And when you promote the images of black men who are successful with white women, then it creates insecurities amongst white men, where again, they're not going to form Voltron and work together with the black proletariat, right? So you got working class white men who are the white proletariat. You got working class black men who are the black proletariat. They both need to be working together and forming Voltron to overthrow the classist system, right? Or fight for better conditions in the system, but they won't do that because the powers that be are smart enough, the billionaire class, to create sexual tensions, interracially. And the main theme, the classic one, is that if black men get money or they get too much power, they're going to go and they're going to get white women because they want white women. And then you get the whole thing with white men where it's like, well, that's not a fair exchange because we don't want black women. You see? And so they fear that. And you see it all over the social media. It's just constant all over social media. No matter how small of a population of black men, are getting with white women. You have, what is it, like anywhere from I've seen as low as 40 million to 60 million white marriages in this country in terms of like how many white people are married. And the reason it fluctuates is because people are getting married and people are getting divorces, but it's about anywhere from 40 to 60 million marriages of white people in this country. And the number of black marriages, in this country are black and white marriages, black male, white female marriages in this country is I've seen as high as the estimate of 500,000, as low as the estimate of 400,000, which equates to like 35,000 to 45,000 uh, 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 black men marrying white women, a year, right? That's what the estimate is. And I'm like, okay, so what was the number on how many white people get married a year? I know there's about 2 million marriages a year. But so we could argue that if white people are 65% of the population, that looking at if we do, well, I guess you can't do it that way. But I'm saying obviously the majority of marriages in this country are between white people getting with other white people. Like what's crazy is the 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 white female population is 100 million, somewhere around there. And then the black male population is 20 million. And the majority of the black male population marries black women. But yet white men are completely obsessed with that. Right? Completely obsessed with that. And then when you look at the percentage of white women that marry black men, of the white women who get married, it's only like what did I say it was? 7% of the, what was that? 7%. Here's a breakdown of the opposite sex newlyweds. No, this is just newlyweds. This is just newlyweds. This isn't even the whole population. But of just newlyweds, black men married to white women is only 7% of the population. I'm saying that first off, the paranoia is it's unwarranted, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's not justified when you look at the numbers. There is a major obsession with black male sexuality as a threat. I mean, yeah, if you get on social media and all you do is look at all those like black and white interracial couple pages, oh yeah, you would be thinking, hell yeah, that's a lot of people, right? If I was just looking at a page that had 40,000 interracial relationships, that would have me believing it's going on everywhere. No, it's not going on everywhere. You got to remember that the overall U.S. population is 330 million people. It's a drop in the bucket. It doesn't even scratch the surface. This goes back to the whole 1350, right? What is 1350 supposed to represent, right? The white supremacists claim that 13% of the population is, 50% of the convictions. They keep trying to make it crime, or they keep trying to make it murder. It's the arrest. I'm sorry. They keep trying to make it convictions. They keep trying to make it crime. They keep trying to make it murders. It's arrest. And we already know the black community is over policed, right? And we already know that that you'd have to cut that number in half because it's primarily men, right? And then you'd have to reduce that number significantly even more because all 20 million black men in the black community are not, getting arrested, right? You have to, I think, 1/3, because I think 1/3 of all black men, have a felony, right? Which is high, but right, we can understand going, the over policing, going back in the past, all those black men that are old that were getting hit with trumped up charges in the 50s and 60s, right? Black men who were a part of the Black Panther movement, right? They were neutralized by the federal government, getting hit with trumped up charges, so you got a whole bunch of that going on, right? Then you got the 1994 crime bill, right, that targeted black men. It's always funny how we can be targeted when it comes to policies that are meant to undermine black men specifically. Oh, we can get specific when it comes to targeting black men to further marginalize them, but we can't get specific when it comes to targeting them. When it to what do you want to call it? To fix what has been done to black men. Again, that's why I always look at the situation and I say to myself, I'm like, America has the black people it deserves. Again, my question still stands. I'm like, if it's a moral argument, if you're trying to make a character argument, why is it that any amount of white children are born out of wedlock? If you want to make some sort of statement that, the black community or in the black community, that black men are just, they're just all dysfunctional and they abandon all their kids, and it's because they're subhuman and character flaw and they lack morality and all this other bullshit. No, they lack money. That's what they lack. I'm willing to bet that in the white community, that the almost 40% of white children that are born out of wedlock, the firstborn children, are going to be white people from the lower socioeconomic rungs of white society, because you still have classism within the white community. I'm willing to bet that. Like I said, it's not going to be white people that that live in like the wealthiest county in Connecticut in America. That's not where you're going to find the single moms. You're going to find the single moms in West Virginia. You're going to find the single moms in Kentucky. You're going to find the single moms, where there's poor white people, where there's trailer parks and shit, because of a lack of money, not because those white individuals, lack moral character. Like, and the thing is I'm interested to see how long that holds up. I'm interested to see how long if you're poor, it's because you're morally flawed or you have some character flaw. I want to see how long that holds up as more and more white people fall into poverty because of what the Trump administration is doing to the economy, right? I want to see if that holds up. Now, right now, white men are trying to run around and they're trying to, they're doing the same thing black men were doing, and trying to use the Bible and spirituality and religion and Islam and trying to get women to fall in line and turn America into the Handmaid's Tale and all that shit. And the thing is like, again, as white men lose their status and they lose their position, you're probably going to see more interracial relationships when it comes to white women, because, white women kind of take the same position that black women do. In other words, if everybody's going to be broke and nobody has anything, well, I might as well get with somebody that I can actually get along with and has the personality that I like, right? Because I've seen a number of videos of white women, on social media where, they're talking about, I want a man that has high EQ, and again, when it comes to personality, I would argue that black men got a lot of white men beat, because black men tend to be more egalitarian. Black men have game, swag, charisma, all that stuff. Make a woman laugh, right? Because black, men have always had to, turn lemons into lemonade and make something more out of life than just whether I got a corporate job and I got a white collar job in corporate America. Like, black people as a whole have always had to do that. Even though I think black women got drunk on basically being the model minority for the black community and, being given, lofty positions in not corporate America, but for the federal government, which is why a lot of black women lost their position recently. And you had that 300,000 job loss when it came to black women, because black people are disproportionately in the federal government. They're disproportionately in not just the federal government, they're disproportionately in the state and local governments, as opposed to being in the private sector where all the money is made. Because there's still discrimination in the private sector. So when it comes to, why are black men not getting married? There is a direct correlation between men not getting married and men being unemployed and underemployed. It's just that simple. And white men don't escape that. It's just the fact that there's more white men that are economically viable, at least as of right now, than black men. And it's always been that way in this country. Black people came out of slavery with nothing but the clothes on their back, followed by, Jim Crow for 100 years. And then all the policies, redlining, blockbusting, eminent domain, urban renewal, convict leasing, CIA, Iran, Contras, 1994 crime bill, right? COINTELPRO, right? All these things, right? Driving highways through black communities, right? The 1956 Federal Highway Commission Act, freaking, did I say urban renewal? I think I said urban renewal, an eminent domain, right? All these sorts of things. So, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, I think, America has the black people deserves. I think it's unfortunate that black women take the position that they take. They'll say because, black men are being nasty to black women and all this other stuff. But, y'all got to understand that, a lot of the stuff that happened in the past and, whether a black man was lying or making promises, that he didn't keep or whatever, these young black men don't have anything to do with that. They're just simply looking at the landscape. They see a black matriarchy that is firmly in place, and they're saying to themselves, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want that for myself. And again, with the way that black women, have babies the way that they do, with this sort of, well, black men ain't never going to make it, and I'm not going to let that stop me from motherhood. You know what I mean? The white man has created a system where, our men are not economically viable. I'm not going to end, the black race just because of that. Well, that only contributes to, young men that are out here. It takes time for a young man to get himself established and get his shit together. And then when he finally does, he walks out into a world where all the black women are already mothers. I mean, again, you go back to that CDC report, only 14% of 14% of black fathers became fathers under the age of 20, where 42% of black women became mothers underneath the age, of 20. And then, I think when it's Hispanic women, because they were the second highest portion, 38% of them become mothers under the age of 20. The only difference between the white community and the Hispanic community is the ratio of Hispanic fathers to Hispanic mothers is closer to 1:1. They actually have a better ratio than the white community, of it being 1:1. Where in the black community, that ratio is, it's like, what did I say it was? 1.4. So for every 100 black fathers, you got 1.4 mothers, something like that. That's the biggest parental gap in the community. So if you're a young black man and you're childless and you're looking for a childless woman, you got an uphill battle. There's more childless men in the black community than there are childless women. When you look at the childless people, childless black women are the smallest demographic. And again, this is why there's a gender war in the black community, because the two largest demographics are mothers and childless black men. Childless black men at 54% are the second largest demographic in the community. And it makes sense because you have women who are sharing men, those men that, get all the women. And the fact that women don't want every man, just as every man doesn't want every woman. Even in the white community, what I find funny is there's a whole, the white woman that I did a video about, every white man does not want every white woman. Like she said, there's a whole bunch of things that a white man they're picky as hell. They'll disqualify a white woman if she's too old. They'll disqualify her if she doesn't weigh 120 pounds. They'll disqualify her most certainly if she's a single mom, even if a white man is the one that made her a single mom. They'll disqualify, her if she doesn't come from the right background. They'll disqualify her even if let's say the guy even within the the whole classes. Like a white guy that comes from has a certain background, a certain pedigree, a certain education, he'll disqualify a white woman because her household is broken. Look at what they did with Meghan Markle and talking about how, her parents weren't together. When it came, she doesn't deserve, Prince Harry. This kind of goes back to the whole when you what was it? When you disrupt their frame of reference. Princesses look like beautiful white women. Princesses look like, Elin Nordegren. That's what a princess is supposed to look like, right? They're not supposed to look like Meghan Markle. This disrupts my frame of reference. You see? And so, they ripped on Meghan Markle because she came from a broken home, because her she had an estranged father or whatever. Right? The higher up in class, the white people, when you start talking about class, they start getting real picky about what they will and will not accept. And again, even when it comes to white men, white men have different, they're not all in the same class. Proletariat working class white men are not competing for the same white women that upper class white men are competing for. They're not. And the question is, well, what white women are, white men competing for when they think that they're competing with black men? I would argue there's a lot of white women in there that they think that they're competing with black men, but they're not. You know what I mean? Hell, if a white woman dresses a certain way, like the white girls with the slicked hair back and the freaking, the wigger white girls with the hoop earrings and whatnot. If a white girl dresses like she dates black guys, white guys will disqualify her just based off of the way that she dresses. They'll be calling her mud shark, and she might be a white woman that only dates, white boy wiggers and shit. She only dates, give me like a white guy that's like a hood white guy. I can't think of some. I was going to say Paul Wall, but Paul Wall, he obviously married a black woman and he's been with her ever since. And then that's another thing. That's something else that I've noticed. You ever notice that the white boy wiggers are not in any of these conversations? All of a sudden they disappear. All we see is MAGA, Trump type of white guys. We don't see hood white guys. Is it because the hood white guys will get immediately dismissed if they say something? You know what I'm saying? Like who's the white guy? James something. He's a white. He does all the rapping and shit. And you got the other white guy. They just did the song together. It was like Twista, the James something, and then the other white guy. He's like a younger white guy. He does the whole country hip hop thing. I think he's got the song Big Box Chevy, something like that. Like, where are those white dudes? Like the white dudes that they're so deep in like the hip hop game or hip hop music, they always throw me off, especially the country ones. You know what I mean? Like country hood white dudes. You ever come across them? Man, them motherfuckers are weird. I don't know how to I'm used to dealing with like, hood white dudes in like New York, in Philly. You know what I mean? The white boys with the lineup. They got fresh pair of Jordan 5s or Jordan 4s on and some shit like that. You know what I mean? They got they know how to dress. They get the line up. You know what I mean? They usually fuck with all different type of races of women. They get it. Black women, Spanish women, white women. You know what I mean? They kind of tend to lean away from white women. There's like this wigger population where the wigger white women, they don't mess with white wigger dudes, and then the same thing with the wigger white dudes. They don't mess with the hood white women. I don't know. They kind of like miss each other. They kind of like, I feel like when they walk into a space with their black friends, they kind of squint and look at each other like, you know what I mean? Like, what's your deal? What's your deal? Traitor. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? I feel like they look at each other like that. But I'm saying, if you notice, like, they're absent from these conversations. All we get are like racist white guys that live in parts of the country where there's literally very few black people. The black people like live way like, you know, on the other side of the town or some shit like that. They don't even interact with them. I will say that when it comes to the South, like one of the things I hate about the South, man, they've marginalized black people so much that there's really no other way for black people to be, you know, than because it's like there's like especially like in Florida. Oh man, you know, the hood culture. I mean, when they're so hood you can't understand them. Like I'm talking about the black folks that need subtitles when they get up on the news. You know what I mean? Like those black people, like they're so just cast to the side. You know that and the white people, I mean, they think it's like you get these white people that come from the north, you know what I mean? They don't care. They're like, hey, it's tropical weather. Like, hey, you know what I mean? And they'll go to spots, and I know because I've come across them, and they'll go to spots, and I'm like, hey, how come you know what's up? Why'd you stop going to that spot or whatever? And they'll tell you, they'll be like, yo, I'll go in there and you know what I mean? They're racist as hell. I can't fuck with them. They're like, I came down here for warm weather. I didn't come down here for that shit. You know, because you know those that are from the South, like they really like shit is real, like segregated when it comes to like the bars and stuff like that, and you got to know where to go and where not to go. That doesn't happen in the city, you know, that much. I mean, I'm sure there's places like there's expensive places and less expensive places, and if a place is just expensive, it tends to keep out the people that they don't want there because again, the economic disparities between the white community and the black community. You know what I mean? A lot of times you're not going to see black people at ultra, you know, expensive, you know, high end restaurants where, you know, you're talking like $100 and above a plate. You're not going to see a whole bunch of black people there, you know, but, you know, that's the real upper classes, you know, the white working class people. You're not going to see them there either. You know, you're only going to see like people who are in business, you know, people who, you know, are political. That's who you're going to see at those places. But I don't know. It's just something to think about. Like you know, these two scenarios, like these two things that are going on, you know, because I'm like, okay, like y'all really want to have it from both ends, which again, you're trying to make a direct, like it's so stupid. You're making a direct comparison. The populations are drastically different. And then there's the gross economic disparities, which only further leads to, again, more of the black men, you know, who don't want to deal with the problems in the black community that arguably can't be fixed because it's just, you know, at a critical mass, causes them to leave the community, right? Which, I mean, it kind of like loops back on itself because if they leave the community doesn't get fixed, which satisfies the aspect of the black community not being fixed, which is effectively the same as, you know, mobs of white people going into a thriving black community and burning it down. But then at the same time, you know, those men are dating out, which only further frustrates the white men that don't like to see that. You know, and I've noticed this. I've noticed this when it comes to the system of white supremacy, that you have like the white supremacy that you have like the proletariat white men tend not to like the interracial relationships. The elite white men tend to like the interracial relationships because they know it undermines black empowerment. Right? Because like even like when you look at countries like Argentina, right? They sent the black soldiers to go off to Paraguay and go off to, you know, and it was Paraguay and Uruguay. I think they had wars with those countries because Argentina had a black population, but they got rid of them by sending them to war. And then the rest of them, they brought in Italian immigrants to essentially breed them out. White elite men have been doing funny shit like this forever. You know, and it's not always the same. America had a system of formal apartheid, right, where it's black people and white people. Then South Africa had a system of formal apartheid, but then, you know, so many white men were messing with the Zulu women and the Khoisan women, you know, that they created a population that is known as coloreds and then gave them their own designation. Then in Australia, right, they didn't want to have a half caste. So then they created like the movie in the Rabbit Proof Fence, where all of the Aboriginal that were mixed race, they plucked them out, said that you're white now, and then they pushed the Aboriginals, to the side because they didn't want to deal with a half caste population. So they've dealt with it differently in wherever they go. White people, I'm telling you, man, they're pathological. Their whole shit, their obsession with power, they are pathological. I think it's kind of ironic, that, now, the world over, their birth rates are on the floor. And the stupid thing is they continue to misdiagnose the problem because the problem is the fact that the white elites are hoarding the wealth. That is the problem. The white elites are hoarding the wealth. That is the issue. And again, I don't even know how that could be corrected because because white people have never generated their own wealth. They've only stolen it and taken it from other people. Europe was a backwater. America, if they, first off, they had to steal the land from the Native Americans. And then, they suppressed any other type of economies in Latin America, via the CIA and whatnot. They didn't want socialist governments. They wanted to make sure that everywhere on the planet, resources are privatized so that the corporations can go in there and, capitalize on those resources. If the resources are socialized, and the resources go to the people, like countries like Venezuela, what was going on in Iran, or at least they tried to have going on in Iran. That's why you had the whole, you had Mossadegh, who was duly elected. The United States and Western powers went in there and got him out of there, then put in the puppet, the Shah of Iran. And then, again, eventually the Iranian people recognized, hey, you're stealing all our shit. And then they put in power the Ayatollah Khomeini, which just so happened to come in with, all the, the radical, religious aspects and the mullahs and all that other stuff. Right? But this is the way that white people have operated. The white proletariat, white people, they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get it. That capitalism runs on cheap labor. And in order to maintain the lifestyles that white people have had in Europe and in America, there has to be resources and lands and labor that are being exploited elsewhere in the world. And that was typically the global South. And then what do? After they do, they extract the resources, then you end up with white people that end up having, either there's a booming industry, in the West, which, again, all those jobs were taken to China, or, white people are supposed to be creating high-end shit. But everybody can't create high-end shit. Everybody, most Americans are not equipped intellectually, white Americans, to go into computer science, tech, engineering, the hard sciences, the STEM fields. They're not going to school for that. You see? Most of these white guys that are bitching want a unionized manufacturing job. That's where most of the white proletariat, that's what their fathers did. That's what their fathers' fathers did. They want to be workers. But the thing is that now the rest of the world has caught up and they can produce their own goods at cheaper costs because the US dollar is, the world's reserve currency, right? It doesn't make economic sense for the capitalists to pay white Americans the type of wages that they would need in conjunction with inflation. It doesn't make sense to pay them the type of wages that they would need in order to maintain a middle-class lifestyle in America currently. So you have all this, this is the first time, since the Great Depression, that white men, they're so misdiagnosing the problem. They're blaming the Jews. They're running around. They're saying it's because we took Christ out of the schools. They're running around saying, "Oh, I got black fatigue." I'm like, none of this is going to increase your wages. None of this is going to bring down the cost of living. Seriously speaking, you're going to need a new economic system. You're not going to be able to live the lifestyles that you want to live with the current economic system, where you just hope, that through capitalism and not caring about the well-being of other people. And if you somehow win the lottery, I mean, that's what happened with all this cryptocurrency shit. I don't know. They talk about this 2,000 plus deaths. I think that's a joke, but I'm saying, there's definitely two crypto people that by name, deleted themselves because of how much money was lost recently, with crypto. You see, so like you have a financialized system where it's just basically the stock market and gambling and freaking, hoping that I put in 10,000 and I hope that it blows up to 1.5 billion. Right? Like they're hoping that. Right? And I'm like, but what about I don't understand the white nationalists when it comes to this. And I've been saying this multiple times. Like, they're like, we want strong Christian Judeo households and families and, neighborhoods and everything else. Okay, talk to me about the money. Where's the money coming from? Talk to me about, full medical and dental, unionized labor. Talk to me about those things. And how would you even be competitive with China? How would you be competitive with other markets that manufacture what you manufacture at a fraction of the cost? How would you be competitive with that? This is why, when it comes to the idea of World War III, this is why, people are grumbling about World War III and why, Pete Hegseth, in my opinion, changed it to the Department of War, right? Because war brings the Great Reset, where you can cripple other nations' abilities to be competitive in the economic markets. Like, in other words, it's racial tribalism, but at a national scale. So instead of it's the whites versus the blacks, it's America versus China. It's America versus Russia. Right? It's Western powers versus Eastern powers. That type of shit that they've been putting in video games, in every Call of Duty video game, for the last freaking 20 years. Because without something like a resource-based economy, I talk about this in another video, like how the hell we get to like the actual future. Because, proletariat white men, they fall for the shit every fucking time. Every fucking time. When it comes to, the economics. Just think about what these white nationalists want. They're like, we want Christian households and we want to get rid of all the blacks and all the other minorities. We want a white ethno state. And then I'm like, you still haven't talked about how you're making money. How are you making money with your capitalism? The only way they'd be able to go out and make money is basically they just got to, again, recolonize the world, basically. And reinstitute slavery, basically, so that they can live on Mount Olympus, and eat, freaking stuffed turkey and shit like that, and everybody else who's not white is poor. It's the ultimate form of white supremacy. You see? Because I've been looking at it, I'm like, I don't see where America gets back to the 1950s with this Make America Great Again and a booming economy and strong manufacturing. I don't see it. And right now, in my opinion, white men are focused on the wrong thing. They're foaming at the mouth, black fatigue, foaming at the mouth. Oh, pay the coal, what is it? Burn the coal, pay the toll, usual suspects. What about Chicago? All this all this stuff that they're talking. Oh, she's a mud shark. All of it is connected to white male anxiety about the fact that they have no economic prospects. And the fact that they're losing ground, no matter how you want to break it down. They want white supremacy. They want the privileges of the white men that were their predecessors. That's what they want. You know what I mean? But how do you get that in a world where basically everybody's handling their own shit internally within their countries? They're producing goods for themselves. There is no more colonization. There is no more wealth or resources being vacuumed back up into Europe. Like I said, they don't even put their own shit in there. European culture is so great. Okay, well, why isn't your museum filled with your own historical artifacts? Why is it filled with other artifacts around the world? Why is that? Yeah, because truth be told, it's just a trophy room. It's like the trophy room in the Predators movie where you got the xenomorph skull and a bunch of human skulls and spines on the wall and alien creatures that we've never seen before. And that's really what the museums are for white people. They're trophy rooms of we've conquered the world. That's what we did. And the stupid thing is like they don't want any of the reputation. They don't want any of the label of savagery that is white culture, the genocide, the blood that goes with white culture. They don't want any of that. It's like that blood red picture of King Charles that he didn't even recognize was a slap in the face to him of the British Empire and what it did to the world and the blood that is on, King Charles' hands or his family bloodline or not. Yeah, his bloodline. I'll just leave it at that. But I've been really thinking about this whole, we're going to make black men economically viable. And then we're going to make direct comparisons or not make black men economically viable. We're going to marginalize them into oblivion, into the dust. And then we're going to make a comparison between us as the dominant members of society with all the resources. And stupid thing is, even if you're a white working class proletariat that you don't even have it all together, you don't even have it going on, but suddenly we're gonna try to compare, Charles Bronson or James Bond, or some Wall Street white guy. We're gonna make a direct comparison between a white man that has James Bond 007 aesthetics and class and prestige, and we're gonna compare him to some black guy in the hood. We're going to compare him to, I don't know, give me somebody who looks like Kodak Black. And then we're going to say, yeah, you see Kodak Black? Yeah, he doesn't take care of his kids. Even though we've set up a system to make it to where he struggles to do so and can't have a relationship. That whole tribal aspect to take away resources away from the group of men that you see as sexual competition and lower their social status so that you can say, we're number one, right? We the best, right? And I'm saying you could argue like, oh yeah, it's effective, overall. You can say, oh yeah, it's effective, but the thing is like everybody's on to you. Like it's like you're not the best. And again, now that the white elites aren't even sharing the wealth with the white proletariat, they're in a major identity crisis right now. Because they have the identity of the white elites like in their heads, but they have none of the resources and they don't even realize that. Like you don't have the resources. You have none of the resources. Yeah, that guy over there on Wall Street, yeah, he's rich, but you're not. And then you get online and then you start mocking black guys because you're like, well, black guys are beneath me and 1350 and usual suspects and all that bullshit. And oh, she's a mud shark. She got a black guy, which again burns you up because you're like, well, I mean, at least I'm white. At least I'm white and I have proximity to the white elites. Why are you getting with that black guy? Because first off, your personality sucks. You have nothing else going on, and you don't even have the resources of the white elite guy. At least the black guy is cool, funny, entertaining, is playful, enjoyable to be with. You're not even that. And again, I'm not making that up. That's not something I'm making up in order to boost my own ego. That I've seen numerous videos on social media of white women saying just that. And I'm like, well, damn, what's going on in the white community? And then you throw on the fact that, just to show how much white men don't got it like that. So let me get this right. You got to create laws in order to prevent white women from aborting your children. You got to create laws in order to try to force white women into, having children for you. You have to create laws. You have to change policies. You got to come out with Project 2025 in order to get that happen. Like, oh yeah, you're really fucked up. Like I said in another video, I was like, yeah, I'm like, white men got the same problem as Asians and Africans and Indians and shit like that when they rely too heavily on an unequal system where there's like huge gaps in wealth, and they just kind of like ride the wave of like, do you know who my father is? Do you know who my father is? Do you know my family's pedigree? You know what I mean? They come up and, they just say that, but it's like, dude, like, you don't know how to talk to a woman. I remember when I think it was Ari Spears, he made the joke, like talking about Africans in the club in America, talking about, bitch, come here. Bitch, I want to talk to you. Come here, bitch. You know what I mean? Like they just like act like women are their, I snap my fingers. You come here. Where are you going? You know what I mean? Like that type of shit. Yeah, because they never had to develop any sort of skills. They never had to develop. They didn't go without. They were able to sit there and just, hey, look at my material wealth. Come get with me. Come look at me. Right? But when it comes to what do you want to call it? When it comes to what was I going to say? When it comes to black men specifically, they've gone without. I mean, this is one of the gaps between educated lames and street dudes. Street dudes do have more game overall than educated lames. Some educated lames got some game. You know what I mean? But a lot of times educated lames don't have game like that because, they had to disassociate themselves from the community. They weren't out partying or mingling. They were studying, they were grinding. They were too busy focusing on mastering their craft, mastering their knowledge base. And so when it comes to street dudes, the reason why street dudes are able, it's like, oh, he's from the streets. He doesn't have a whole lot. Like, why are women fucking with him? Because he knows how to talk to women. He has way more practice in knowing what works and what doesn't work than let's say an educated lame. And the fact of the matter is a lot of white guys, they got the same problem. That's why there's an incel problem within the white community. Then you throw on the newer generation, Gen Z, that right at the point that they're really supposed to go out there and spread their wings as young adult men. What happened? What happened with Gen Z? What did they get hit with? They got hit with COVID. They were on lockdown. So they ended up focusing on, again, social media, which makes everything look 10 times worse than what it actually is. So they're up there on Instagram seeing all the white girls with the black guys or talking about they want black guys and everything. And they're not even remotely looking at the numbers. I'm like, why don't you get off of social media and go to the other end of the internet and look up where all the research actually is on what the actual numbers are? This is why they're crashing out the way that they are. COVID really killed regular white male development, as, it would have usually unfolded for them in conjunction with the fucking economy taking a nosedive. Right? In conjunction with that. So in my opinion, that's why you see, what you see. That's why you see the rise of, these sort of incel looking white guys and even the podcasters and the influencers and everything. I was watching a guy today. It came up on Instagram, and he was talking about the Jews and the collapse of Western civilization and, all this stuff, and, basically, back to that, wanting to have a white ethnicity. And I'm looking at the dude, and I'm like, dude, you're fat. Like, you're literally fat. Like, he was a fat white dude with glasses. You know what I mean? He's talking all this shit. And I'm like, nigga, go to the gym. Get your weight up. You know what I mean? Get your money up. And so like that tells me like how easy it was for white men. Like white men had it easy. They had it easy. They had it easy when it came to securing jobs. They had it easy when it came to, or I'm saying relatively easy compared to like black men, for example. They had it easy. And now they don't have it easy and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do but be mad and project their anger onto everybody else. Oh, it's the reason. Oh, it's because black men are breathing up all the white man's air. It's the Jews. It's the Jews. All that shit. And I'm saying that as somebody who totally understands the anger, at the Jewish, not the Jewish community, but at Israel when, it's like, yo, we're struggling over here. Why is all this money going to Israel? How come we can't get anything done? How come these politicians won't do what we say? Stop sending money over there. Send money over here. Hey, we need this. We need that. And they're not doing it. I see, like, I don't know what Jewish people were thinking in terms of that. I know, or Israelis. I don't know what they were thinking. Because I'm like, yo, you definitely, it's like the mask just came off and, all that. We control them and I'm like, damn, you saying that shit out loud and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, the next 50 years is probably not going to be good for you when all of these young people become, get themselves in positions of power. It's probably not going to be good for you. On top of the fact that America's like, it feels like it's going broke. Now people are talking about this massive transfer of wealth, when it comes to the, white elites. But, to me, I'm like, that's a small percentage of the population that has that type of wealth. It's not going to go to the working class white people because working class white people tend to have working class white parents. They don't have white parents that have a massive stock portfolio. They don't have that shit. So I don't know what the future holds, but all I know is these young white men, you guys are misdiagnosing the problem like a motherfucker. Constantly misdiagnosing the problem. The system needs to change. I don't know how it's going to change. The economics of it, what's going on with the white elites and what they're doing and whatnot. But seriously speaking, that's the group that you need to be focused on because they're the ones that actually have the power to change the system. Not what the blacks are doing. What about Chicago? What about Chicago? None of that shit affects you. Black on black crime is what? It's black on black crime. And black on black crime, again, is a byproduct of the unequal system that your people created. Again, like, you see all this. You see even the dog whistles from friggin', Steven Crowder in that barbershop interview. All that, you're going to try to make young white men pay for reparations. And that's what you're going to try to. First off, we already know young white men don't have any money. Second off, that money is going to come from the same place that Israel gets its money from, which is the federal government, the Federal Reserve. That's where that money's going to, and other institutions that still exist today that participated in the slave trade, insurance companies and things like that insured slaves, Harvard University. That's where that money is going to come from. Not you're just trying to paint the picture like a bunch of, like 5 black guys are going to run up to a 20-year-old white guy that literally graduated high school 2 years ago that has no money, and we're gonna flip him up, grab him by his ankles and shake him until some fucking, some change pours out of his pockets. Like, fuck out of here. No, that money is in the hand of largely the boomers and financial institutions. That's where that fucking money is. You know what I mean? But he frames it like that to goad the white boys in the white boy rage. You got black fatigue. You got the Ukrainian woman that got stabbed on a train. You got Carmelo Anthony. All the blacks, they're out to get you. Right? Instead of, because you know why they do that? Because they don't want you to do what Luigi Mangione did. That's why they get you to do that. That's why they want you to focus on, the blacks. Right? This is the playbook, right? Because who do you think backs and funds all these people? Why don't you go look who backs and funds all these talking heads? All these conservative, bobbleheads that have, these what do you want to call it? These channels that they have. You know what I mean? Like where they get platform, that shit is being backed. It's money. That's why they're always talking in these sort of canned responses. They're always trying to slip in a buzzword or two. I got black fatigue. Well, yeah, that's the new word. That's the new phrase, black fatigue. Before it was woke. Now it's black fatigue. Yeah. Aren't you white people tired of the blacks? Right? Even though, again, America has the black people it deserves, you could have had a thriving, contributing black community, but you were fearful that black people rising economically would equate to black people doing unto white people as white people have done unto black people, and that black people, like we would be like Hamas or something like that, and we would dig tunnels underneath white communities and whatnot, and then one day on we'll call it Emergence Day, like Gears of War, all the black people would come crawling out of the manholes with RPGs on their back or some shit like that. Like black people were minding their fucking business, you know what I mean, thriving underneath Jim Crow because they were forced to work with each other, had their own shit. Right? Own schools. It may not have been on par with what white people had, but it was theirs. This is why some black people think that black people were better off underneath Jim Crow. They weren't conditionally. They were not better off underneath Jim Crow. The only reason why integration, or desegregation happened is because white people were controlling too much of the wealth. And black people didn't have access to certain things. This is all written in the Two Americas and the Kerner Report, in the Kerner Commission. Go look up the Kerner Commission, read the report. That's why black people tore shit up in the 1960s. But there's some aspects of it where it could be argued that black people were better off underneath those conditions because we had institutions. We had things for ourselves. That lived in the shadow of the system of white supremacy. But I'm saying white people, what did they do? What did they do to Corbin, Kentucky? What did they do in Omaha, Nebraska? What did they do in Springfield, Illinois, Rosewood, Tulsa, Slocum, Elaine, Ocoee, Wilmington, right? What did they do to these communities? They burnt them down and destroyed them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't know where you all are surprised about the dysfunction in the black community. And, why do we have to deal with these YNs? But you created them. As I said before in my video that I have, like you could have had Gizmo, but now you got Gremlins. And again, instead of fixing the problem, instead of putting the money back, you just act like, it's a moral character flaw deficiency. I'm like, is that what it is? Okay, yeah. Then when it comes to you being broke and you not being able to afford to get married or you not being able to afford to buy a house, it's a character flaw based on what Dave Ramsey is saying about you. Right? But you gotta get some grit in your gut in your stomach. And what these parents need to do is they need to kick these 25-year-olds out of their house. That's what they need to do. I still to this day I love that Undead Chronic Dave Ramsey video. I mean, it's the chef's kiss. It's the chef's kiss. I love when white men direct their anger at the appropriate targets. That there's nothing more satisfying to me than when white men accurately identify the root of the problem. Instead of sitting there acting like black fatigue is why they can't buy a house. Or the reason why they're not in a relationship is because black guys are out here impregnating white women and making them single moms. And I'm like, did you even look at the numbers on that? Do you know how many single moms white men create? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you not like, just sit there and look at the smallest demographic and go, aha, like it's the dumbest shit ever. But this is what they do. And in large part, it's done because they're looking for an outside enemy. They're looking for a boogeyman. They're looking for somebody to blame that's not them, that somehow they can, like as though we're supposed to be, and I said this in another video, like we're supposed to be the damn the damn fax machine in what was the office that they go and they beat up, right? To take out their anger on their frustrations. I'm like, it ain't gonna be that way. It ain't gonna go down like that. But yeah, this is what I see. But anyway, let me end this video. I made it way too long than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to be clear about like what I was seeing, and this whole thing. Yeah, the problem is definitely the marginalization of black men. Just point blank, period. The matriarchy exists because of the marginalization of black men. There's things that black women do that exacerbate the problem, you know what I mean? But, black women are not the root of the problem, because the root of the problem is the system of white supremacy. That's where it starts, with the economic marginalization of black men. Then, the women, they just adjusted, from that, and then, just ran with it. That's where they get totally stupid with it. They made it worse. It's like a guy who, who's unemployed and then goes and has a baby. Like, oh, God damn, it was bad enough that you didn't have a job, but now you done went off and made a baby. You know what I mean? You done made it worse. And there's many things that black women do that make an already fucked up situation even worse. I'm like, oh, so you're going to have kids now in poverty, and then, they're not getting the proper resources. They don't have the proper guidance from a man who's in the proper position. But, you get to experience the satisfaction of being a mother. It satiates that feeling that you need in order to feel whole. But then all the children that you have, your daughters are going to end up being teen mothers. And then your sons are going to end up being YNs in the community, terrorizing the community. That's what's going to happen, because they didn't get the proper guidance, the proper foundation. There's nothing there for them. And I got mixed feelings on it, because I do understand the whole, the attitude of, we're not going to let white people just starve us out like that. Fuck that. I get it. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not the type to participate in we're just, when can we get underway, damn it, and just bring kids into the world, without having anything going on. You know what I'm saying? Either you fight the system, you know what I'm saying, or you perish. But you don't bring kids into a fucked up, untenable, situation, just so that you can say, well, we're continuing on. And then you complain about the outcome of that, which only, it just multiplies. Because you get more and more broke men that don't have any money and don't have any resources. They go off and, get with Keisha. Keisha gets pregnant. Rinse, wash, repeat. And it's just more struggle, more poverty, more YNs, more joblessness, more underemployment, right? Just more and more and more and more and more of that. Because there's no, effort in any sort of discipline when it comes to both the men and the women. The reason why I look at women sideways is because when it comes to reproduction, ladies, that shit is all you. Because you have final say. Y'all been running around, my body, my choice, all that stuff. You determine who you open your legs for. You determine when a child comes into a world, if a child is going to come into the world, and how many children are going to come into the world. Because there's always going to be a population of dumb black men out here that just, guys that, I can't even be cool with because I don't like the way that he moves. But me rejecting him and not being, not fucking with him, but then you go off and you sleep with him, there ain't really much I can do about that. And then you go off and you get pregnant by him and then have a child by him, You know what I mean? And then that creates problems. And then he's not with you. Y'all get in a fight because he broke. And then y'all break up. And then now you got 2 kids that need guidance. And then now in a face of a guy like me talking about my son needs a mentor. My son needs guidance. Now I'm like forced into, and then it's like you'll sit there and you'll be like, well, if you want the community fixed, you need to help me raise this boy. And I'm like, yo, I would have preferred that you didn't have done that shit in the first place. If there's nothing here for him. Even if I give him manhood training programs, where are the economic opportunities? He's still going to have to go out there and beg a white man for a fucking job. You know what I'm saying? Like the shit is fucked. And I don't have the answers. This is one of the reasons why when it comes to the gender war, I like backed off of it. Because without men being gainfully employed, there is no patriarchy. There is no conversation about women submitting and everything. Again, it's the same thing that black men are saying when they hop the fence and get with other races of women. They're like, I'm not participating in the black matriarchy. So they leave. They either go monk and be alone, or they leave the community and go and interracially date. But that's them not participating. But when it comes to, the patriarchy and black men who are in the position, black women have been doing that. They don't participate. They'll find any reason to dismiss the dude. He look like he get with white girls. They'll find any reason to dismiss the dude because they look at him, they're like, girl, he look like he talking that patriarchal stuff. Girl, shit, you think he gonna tell me what to do? Fuck that. I'm like, well, he is paying the way. Like I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like it's his vision, the kids and raising them and everything. Like you do need strong patriarchal men. I don't know what y'all don't get about that. How are you going? How is the black community going to compete against other patriarchal communities with weak men? How does that work? When you don't get with a guy who even has enough like resources or wherewithal to even move us in the right direction. Because again, what are the white men fearful of? What did they burn down? They didn't burn down black matriarchies. They didn't burn down communities full of single moms. They let communities full of single moms just be. You know what I mean? Like at best, they'll go in there with eminent domain and urban renewal and just displace them so that they can build a high rise or some shit like that. But when it came to black male controlled, patriarchal communities, you know what I mean? Like they burnt them suckers down. They destroyed those communities. So who's the bigger threat? Who are they more fearful of? It's obvious. It's obvious. But you'll have black women running around, I'm an educated, sophisticated boss babe, city girl, da 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 da. Thinking that it's better for black women to be in that position than black men. The whole idea is to black men be gainfully employed and then break off and then go and create their own shit. Because you got to start somewhere. You got to have some type of gainful employment. But, fuck it. If black men are just going to be just economically excluded wholesale, niggas might as well just crash the fuck out then. Right? But see, the thing is even with that now, it's like we see it where we're like, oh, white men are being affected by the things that have affected us too. So now what? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, we're sitting there acting like before it was like white men are giving jobs to themselves. They're giving jobs to their own sons and they're excluding us. And again, we were forcibly brought here. We didn't even come here by choice like other immigrant groups. And then they when we had businesses, they burnt down our businesses. God damn it, you gonna open these motherfucking doors up to them unionized jobs, or we will burn this bitch down, which is what happened in the 1960s. Black people crashed the fuck out. You see? But now it's like, well, damn. So they don't even have jobs to give their own sons now. Fuck. That changes the calculus. So what do we do now? I don't know, Captain. I don't know. Right? So like now at best, like brothers are out here trying to, get it how they can get it, work with each other, hustle, you know, go on social media. That's why everybody's on social media and YouTube and TikTok and all this other shit. That's why they're doing all that shit. You know? That's why you got all these every black man on YouTube's trying to be a church and get paid tithes, and pander to the black manosphere and all of the type of rhetoric and conservatives are trying to get the bag. Right? Now this is where the Pan-Africanism conversation should come into play, where it's like, okay, well, we can't do anything with the current collapsing American system. Maybe we can do something with trying to facilitate some sort of manufacturing base in Africa and then bring some of those goods over to America and then take our cut off of the top. We break the Africans off, right? They get their money, right? Because now they have markets to sell to. So like we should be taking flights over there, trying to, build facilities and shit like that. That's my thought processes on it. You know what I mean? But a lot of people, when they talk all that Pan-Africanist shit, it's more or less of just symbolism. There ain't no real moves, being made. This is where I get on, Neferkari's bumper about that shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, why are you focused on FBA's delineating and whatnot? Because we're tired of, immigrant blacks undermining, African Americans' fight for reparations, right? As opposed to, making the moves in Africa or making the moves in the Caribbean. There should be a United States, a United States of the Caribbean. There should be. There should be. There should be a federation, like an actual federation. Like it's not even like each island is more of a province than an actual independent country. And there should be a country that's probably in the middle of all of them that acts as, the seat of power for all the Caribbean nations. That's how it should be. But they want to have a loose affiliation and whatnot. But I'm just saying that's what they should be. Same thing with Africa, with the, Gaddafi and the Mataba conference. And he wanted them to go to a gold bullion. But, he would be fucking with the little hats money. You know what I mean? So, they had to stop that. They had to put a stop to that. And that's why they took Gaddafi out. Because he was talking about fucking with the money, fucking with the currency and shit. And having a United States of Africa and one gold bullion, for the African countries. Right? But, that fall through. Africa's too valuable as a continent. Too many resources, too big, right? But again, with a dying West and Africa, I think their birth rate is I think the birth rate in Nigeria is 6. It's stupid. It's 6. They're having 6 kids apiece. And so, Africa is positioned to be in a much better position in the near future. I don't know if it'll be the dominant force, but it's definitely in a much better position just based off of demographics alone. So the rest of the world is going to be having World War III so that they can decide which superpower can take over Africa and the raw materials and resources in Africa that they're going to need. And the same thing with China is definitely going to be a focus and a target because China was blessed with a disproportionate amount of the world's rare earth resources, unless they can find rare earth resources elsewhere. So the United States wants to bar China from having sophisticated microchips from TSMC, and then China's like, all right, touche, fuck you back. Okay, you can't have our, rare earth minerals that you need for the microchips. So they're at a bit of a stalemate. So that's what's going on with the 100% tariffs and shit. So there's a lot of shit going on. And the dumbest part is, that smaller part of, just that basic, like, it's like the Pakal brothers and Django. You got these poor white, have nothing in their bank account white dudes in the rural South foaming at the mouth because a black guy is square dancing with a white girl. And you got all this other shit going on in the world. You know what I mean? That affects America. Like, affects America. Like all that World War III shit. Like, yeah, guess who's going to be sent over there? Your white ass. That's who's going to be sent over there. You know what I mean? Shit, black men, we might as well play dumb. Well, the white supremacists, they said we's got low IQs, sir. We can't fight. We can't do nothing. You know what I mean? We be fucking up shit on purpose and shit like that. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers is like, what's this little grenade pin do? Oh, what is this? I don't know what this do. I'll throw it. You know what I mean? We be feigning dumb like a motherfucker. I mean, we only like one step above apes and shit. So I mean, we just don't know nothings because of our low IQs. So I'm too stupid to fight. You know what I mean? I think you should send the high IQ white men. I think they will better serve you in the military, son. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, we're gonna be low IQ like a motherfucker. Like, we're gonna have T-shirts that say IQ below 85. You know what I mean? The military recruiters will be like, damn it. You know what I mean? We'll be fucking up the ABFAP test. We're just gonna put C all the way down that bitch. You know what I mean? Like, telling you, like, yeah. Go get the high IQs to fight. You don't need us, sir. We too stupid to fight. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.
On the scene, diamond blingy whole screen. Check a boy Louis V. I'm so fresh and so clean. Stuff them bands in my jeans, slap them 30s in them things. Pull the trigger, let it sing. Then go smoke a Russian cream.
Move. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hello?
Where you at?
Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!